Hey, this is Tracy Ariel here again from Notable Nonfiction. I'm here to present my third video in my Profile Your Ancestors series. This is the series that began with why profile your ancestors and the fact that a small narrative, which is what I'm calling a profile, the kind of thing a journalist writes about an individual, is the best way to present your genealogy research. In the first video, I talked about some of the reasons why that is, the fact that you find more information when you write specific stories about your ancestors, the fact that you remember it better because you've presented it in a story fashion, and the fact that more people will read it because people love reading stories. They'll listen for a little while about you detailing some of your genealogy research, but they kind of get bored pretty quickly, the average person, unless they're genealogists themselves, in which case we're all fascinated by details. But if you really want to present your work to other people who are not necessarily genealogists, a profile, the way a journalist would write, is a perfect way to do it. In video 2, I talked about how you could go about doing that. I demonstrated 3 different stories and how I selected the stories for each one, and basically described what a profile is in detail and showed you 3 versions of this kind of profile so that you could get some ideas about how you might want to profile your own research. In this video, I'm going to talk even more detailed about how you create one of these profiles. And in order to do that, I'm going to demonstrate what I'm talking about through one of my own stories. This is Anne Joseph Gourdine's Journey to Canada. And I'm just going to tell you some of the decisions I made about when I was doing that story so that hopefully you can get some ideas about how you can tell your story too. Now, clearly from the title, I was talking about journeys. The particular story that I'm talking about is how did this Belgian woman get into one particular farm in the middle of an area quite close to Ottawa. And so in order to place you right into this moment, I bring you, I'm using 2 census documents. She was there for over 2 censuses. And I'm also using a shipping document from when she came from Belgium. And then I'm using a whole bunch of different data just to point out some of the details that I needed to answer in doing this story. So the lead of the story is the anecdote that begins all of it. And I decided to focus on the moment when the census taker was talking to this woman. And I did that because I was able to find out the exact date and time that he was there, who he was, the details about the census, although many of them were destroyed in 1955 when it was microfiched. Most of the documents were destroyed. 2 of the forms were filled out, and so I was able to actually refer back to that in this lead. The structure that I used for this story was it was a magazine structure. This is the one that I really prefer using, although you can use a straight news story for these kinds of profiles too. In this particular case, I decided to go for magazine profile. I talked about the moment he arrived to ask those questions. And then I use a quote from the documents themselves. People really like to see what the documents say, and plus it gives you the language that's used in these documents. And then I went back and I gave you an outline of what the moment was, what the position, where this was in time, where it was in place. It was amazing because I discovered, looking through it and looking through my other information about this woman, that this census taker arrived on her doorstep a couple of days after her birthday. So I just thought that was a particularly poignant moment because all of us can imagine a census taker arriving very soon after the birthday. You're going to be thinking about your birthday. So I just thought it was kind of really neat to put people now into the position of her so long ago. So the structure was very anecdote, very magazine format. Anecdote, quote, and then sequential. Or mostly sequential, with details thrown in. The style that I used in this is very journalistic. It's statements of exactly what I found. I didn't have any documents that said specific quotes, no court cases or moments when I could actually use some sort of dialogue. So everything that I was using was actually just from documents. So the quote that I used is from those documents. And as you can see, there's a ton of information in a very short period of time. Every sentence counts. All the words count. I tried to tighten them as much as possible. Hopefully you won't find too many is's or was in the story. You know, I'm trying to make everything active so that it reads in a stronger fashion. And then the last thing, of course, I used my technique of sound. I tried to make sure that the rhythm, so that when you're reading it in your head, you actually are carried from paragraph to paragraph. The longer paragraphs encourage you to read them in your head more slowly so that you get every detail. The shorter paragraphs are punchy and try to take you forward. And hopefully you enjoyed reading this story as much as I enjoyed writing it. And I really hope that you use some of these techniques in your own profile very soon. And if you need my help doing that, I'll be opening a course to take you through that, and my next video will tell you what that course is about. And I really hope that you'll consider working with me.